Welcome to the Tenant Power Hour, sponsored by the Metropolitan Tenants Organization. I'm John Bartlett, and I'm the Executive Director of the Metropolitan Tenants Organization. And we wanted to put on this discussion so that you can know what to do this come June 1st if you can't pay your rent, or if you're having any problems with your landlord or tenant situation. Please let us know and give us a call or send us a question via chat. And I'll be co-hosting this with.
My name is Philip Devon. I'm with the Eviction Prevention Program at the Metropolitan Tenants Organization. I'll be moderating our chat today. So again, please, if you have comments or questions, just drop it in the post and we'll be addressing those. I'd also like to introduce another panelist, Javier Ruiz, and he's with the Eviction Prevention Program as well. He's an organizer who's been doing a lot of work on eviction defense and preventing displacement during COVID-19. I think with that said, we'll just kind of set the stage. We have been dealing with all sorts of calls related to rent payment, what to do if I'm being evicted, or how to deal with these issues, particularly in the light of the pandemic we're all facing. So that we want to talk about that, answer your questions, and give some insight into what we've seen result in success and things that you might want to avoid as well. Again, if you have any questions, off topic or not, we'll address them. Just drop them in the comments and we'll get right to it. With that said, unless John or Javier have something to add, we could start diving right in. Okay, well, it sounds like we're ready to go. So the first and foremost important thing, we've gotten several questions submitted ahead of this chat. And by far the #1 question was, what should I do if I can't pay my rent on June 1st? So I'm gonna throw out the $1 million question to John and Javier and let you guys start to address it. So what do tenants need to do if they can't pay rent?
I mean, first and foremost, what tenants need to do, they need to approach the landlord to negotiate an agreement. The courts are closed. The governor put an order out that most likely the eviction moratorium court is going to be extended onwards. That doesn't necessarily excuse tenants from rent. However, we are encouraging tenants to negotiate with the landlord. Whatever agreement they come to, whether that be a discount, a payment plan, whatever it may be, get that in writing. That's first and foremost, is approach the landlord, be honest about your situation, but any negotiations you get with the landlord, get it in writing. We like to say if it's not in writing, it might as well not have been said. If it's not in writing, it's not there. First and foremost, negotiate, get in writing.
And I would just like to add, just to be careful about signing agreements where the landlord could still evict you even if you make a payment. So you should be careful about that and make sure that it details, or the agreement details, when and if a landlord could actually evict you if you, for instance, are not able to pay July's rent. So it's one of the things that we want to encourage everyone to think about. And don't make an agreement that you can't fulfill. Like if the landlord tells you that, well, I'm going to expect you to pay the whole month's rent by the end of the month, and you can't do that, then you're just opening yourself up for problems. Make sure it's something that you can do. Any other suggestions, Javi?
Yeah, I mean, just come up with a fair agreement, that's easy for you, like, with your economic situation. Be honest with the owner. Okay, fine, I lost my job. I'm applying for this aid, or whatever the situation may be, right? Honesty is always the best policy, is what we say.
And I would add that MTO's eviction prevention program can provide tenants with template letters to start these conversations with their landlord. So if you are in this situation and don't know how to approach your landlord about this problem, contact us. We've already dropped the link to our contact form on the Facebook comments. So if you need direct assistance, please send us an email and we can reply by sending you template letters that you can use as a sample to create your own notice and start that conversation. And again, make sure that you can get that agreement in writing.
Yeah, another thing that's going on, calls that we're getting too. I mean, a lot of people are backtrack debt since the virus started. So like March, April, and now May, and now June is just going to stack on top of that. So yeah, we are getting calls of people that owe back rent. So I mean, that's also important too to negotiate too. You want to come up with fair agreement, whether that be payments in the future or whatever is fair for for you and your situation. So that also is a problem that we're facing. Like people who have back pay that they're going to owe in the future.
Thanks, guys. We have another question, and the question is about how someone might find out if their building is covered under the CARES Act. And I'm going to add a second part to that question. Actually, the first part, can one of you first just briefly explain what the CARES Act is for folks that might not be aware, and then let us know how they might be able to find out if their unit is covered by the act.
Yeah, so the CARES Act was the federal law passed in March when the pandemic started getting worse. Basically the CARES Act prohibits landlords from issuing tenants notice to vacate and filing eviction cases for non-payment if they receive a federally backed mortgage. So any properties that are, receive any federally backed mortgages, they cannot give you eviction notices until July 25th. It's basically what it is.
And in fact, I believe the Supreme Court just issued a order saying that landlords have to actually verify that they are not covered by the CARES Act if they're going to move ahead with eviction. So they're going to have to look up, and that has to be a part of the eviction filing. And I believe there's a website, but that where you can actually find out if there is, if your building is covered by the CARES Act, isn't there?
Correct. And if you go to tenants-rights.org, that's going to be posted in the comments now. It's posted. You can find, if you just go to our renters resources page right there on the home page, you can find links to search those links, search those sites to find out whether your building is covered. We have a follow-up question about the CARES Act. Does the CARES Act prevent my landlord from giving me a 5-day notice?
No.
Yes, it does. Well, I got it.
Does.
I'm reading it right here. I got it. Says, I'll read it word for word. This is the source right now. I'm basing it off of the Lawyers Committee website. It says, prohibits landlords from issuing tenants notice to vacate and filing evictions for non-payment of rent. Word for word right here what it says.
So some landlords may try to get around this by saying that you're a danger to the building or to other tenants, and that we have heard of some landlords actually still continuing to evict tenants by trying to this go around actually.
Right. So, and I would just add that both of you are certainly correct. And it reminds me of a saying I've used before, which is when it comes to renters' rights and a lot of things, there's the law and then there's reality. So the CARES Act certainly prohibits a landlord from giving you a 5-day notice for non-payment, but that's not going to stop them in reality from actually coming out and giving you one. But there will be protections. And this is always a good time to remind you to save that notice, save and document all the conversations you have with your landlord, because should you unfortunately have to defend yourself against an eviction, once the courts do reopen, you're going to want to have the documentation to prove that.
And I believe about 40% of renters are going to be covered under the CARES Act. That's how many have loans guaranteed by Freddie or by Freddie Mac or the Fannie Mae.
Okay, so now we have another question, and this question from Kashana, I'm going to try and tighten it up a little bit, but it's essentially about how do you deal with harassment from neighbors, and how do you prompt property managers to act on that? This is certainly something that happens pre and during the pandemic, which of course anything is a bit more complicated now. What advice do you have for a tenant that's dealing with harassment in their unit or around their unit?
I would say first step is always start by trying to document the situation. And, so if it's harassment via noise, then, tape it, do something so that you can start showing that this is what's going on. If you maybe get a witness, somebody that can actually verify that's going on, and then you have to you need to contact the landlord and let them know this is going on. Here's some proof, whatever that you can offer, so that the landlord can know, and then the landlord will then be able to start reacting or talking to the tenant. I mean, some of it I think depends on how serious the harassment is. Is this something that you could talk to the other tenant? If it is, then I might start there first. If you feel like that, you feel threatened, then I would go to the landlord.
And I would just add to that for Kashana out there, it was updated that this could be motivated by a disability and their lack of inaction. And it was said that the landlord essentially reacted by saying, well, you can move. And that's a common reaction, unfortunately, that many people run into when they report a problem. So please, Kashana, if you want to talk further, use the contact us form that we've posted in the right above your comment, and we can talk further, and someone can call you to discuss this situation. And if you need help mediating or a legal referral, we can provide that for you.
And depending on if it's a pet that's needed for your health or anything like that, it could even be discrimination or other types of issues, so that you could
it depends on how severe the problem is too. Also check with the building rules too. I mean, we could go something from okay, no smoking allowed in the building, and the other neighbors are smoking. Then we also get the extreme end of it, they're having a party every night. So I mean, let's I would say contact us. Let's see what the specific situation is, and how we can resolve it.
Thank you. We have another question, and this is, I'll just read this question from Jack, who says that he doesn't have COVID-19 issues per se. However, they're having a lot of building code issues in the building. It says, I got a stop work order and they got 2 new elevators, but they were not able to form a tenant organization moving forward. This is a timely question from Jack. It was also on our list of questions that had been submitted prior. So just as a recap, what can tenants do, especially during COVID-19, to address building repair issues?
Avi, you want to take that one?
Yeah. So these are in common areas, or is it in the direct apartment? Or how is it?
Well, I think it seems like it may be a combination of both. So maybe if you could touch on how to address the repair first if it's in your unit, and then address maybe more common area issues directly to Jack's point about forming a tenants association.
Okay. So if there's a stop work order, I mean, I assume the city inspector's already been there multiple times. Generally, when it comes to repair problems, I mean, we always tell tenants, okay, first document and report it. Hey, look, landlord, my sink is leaking, ceiling's caving in. Okay, obviously, first step. Second step, if you've been telling them and they still don't respond, within the Chicago residential landlord tenant ordinance, they do give you a few options, right? If it's a clear city violation, city inspectors already cited it, and it's a problem. The tenant would have the right, send in a 14-day letter to the owner, basically saying if you don't fix this problem within the 14 days, the next time the rent is due, I'm going to reduce a piece of the rent to reflect the diminished value, right? Okay, whether that may be, okay, the broken window or the, the sink's leaking, whatever it may be, report that problem in writing and exercise the RLTO clause, that basically, lets you to withhold a piece of the rent, as leverage to get the owner to fix the problem. Now, if this is like a problem with like a utility, like gas, electricity, water, the notice would be quicker than 14 days. It'll be 24-hour notice. And contrary to that, too, there's simple fixes you can do, like, let's take, for example, broken doorknob. There also is the option to do the repair and reduce, which is basically, okay, fine, you've got 14 days to fix it. If you don't fix it, I'm going to fix it on my own. Whatever I pay out of pocket to fix it, I'm going to do that.
Hey, Javi.
Okay, whether that be, the doorknob cost, $20 at the hardware store, for example. Those are just a few options. I know that was a handful, so I guess we could like put links there to read. Hello?
Yes, so we're linking. Sorry for those of you
Hello?
that we may have missed. Some of you may have missed Javier. He is having some technical difficulties, but essentially what Javi just explained was the two repair options under the RLTO. One, all of them require sending a written notice to your landlord. If it's an essential service like water or heat, or an elevator in a high rise, you will want to send a 24-hour notice. And go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think elevators are a perfect way to build like a tenants association, actually, and to try to really circulate a letter amongst all the tenants, say that if you don't have this fixed immediately, or well, if it's a really high billing, you could say immediately. If it's not, then you probably have to give 14 days to fix this. And if it's not fixed within the 14 days, then we're all going to begin withholding a portion of our rent. And you have to be careful about the how much you take off. Seeing that we're not attorneys, we can't tell you how much to take off, but it has to be something that reflects the diminished value of the rental unit. So certainly nobody would really be living in a high-rise apartment if you had to walk up 10 flights of stairs every day, because that would just be, they would find it hard to rent. So it's certainly worth something. And what I would do is just get as many neighbors as possible, because what we've found is there's strength in numbers. The more people that complain, the more people that all sign on to a letter, the more likely the landlord's going to react. And I would also contact your alderman. Obviously, somebody from the city knows about this building, and I would try to get them engaged, get some pressure put on your landlord to fix things and do it in a right way. Because if there's a stop work order, sounds like the landlord's not doing something correctly.
Yeah, and if there's a stop work order, like I said, it's already cited with the building inspectors. I would say get all the tenants together, everybody put in their demand letter, put the citation of the building inspector report, building inspector report, 5-3, whatever it is, like put the citation on. You already got cited by the inspectors, you need this elevator, or whatever else the problem is. And like John said, there's power in numbers. If everybody's sending a letter in, that's more pressure, that's more eyes on the owner to get the problem done.
And if you'd like some help organizing that, you could, once again, in the contact us, let us know, and we could have an organizer maybe help you even set up a Zoom meeting for your building to help you organize so that everybody's on the same page. Because I think that's the important thing, is that you get everybody on the same page doing the same thing, and then you're going to have probably will be able to succeed.
Thanks, gentlemen. Moving on to the next question. Let's see, this is from Malone Lachon, and Malone is asking, or saying, after telling my landlord I was having trouble paying rent, they responded by going up on the rent. What can I do, and are there any resources that can help me? Also, it was added that when they were told their landlord they don't won't be able to make the rent. They did get a 5-day notice. So what can they do? They've gotten a 5-day notice and they're wondering what resources are out there to help them right now.
Well, the first thing I would do before looking for the resources is I would look to see if the landlord is, are they covered by the CARES Act? Go to the website and just check to see, were they even able to give you a 5-day notice? And if they weren't, then, then they're violating the law, and you'll have more time to figure out what to do, because the 5-day notice would be invalid. And then what I would do is to, once again, I would continue writing the landlord to try to let's make a deal, because it just heard recently that it looks like that the Cook County is going to keep its courts closed till July 6th. So if the courts are going to stay closed to July 6th, that does give you some bit of leverage to get the landlord to the negotiating table, because the landlord may decide, well, I would like some rent better than absolutely no rent for these next months. So that's what, I would kind of try to do, is to write the landlord a nice letter, say, well, I really would prefer to stay here. I just can't do this. Hopefully I'll be getting back to work really soon. And why don't we make a deal? Because else otherwise, the courts aren't going to be open until July. You might not be able to get me out till August or September. And, you could kind of see, how will the landlord react to that?
Yeah.
And also too, oh, you want to go?
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Okay, no, I was going to say too, also too, was this notice given, one, in the middle of a lease agreement, and two, was it a written notice, or was he just verbally telling you the rent is going to increase? That also matters too, depending how he did it.
Yeah, and so to follow up to both of those comments, thank you, Malone, please use that contact us page and send us an email so that we can connect with you and get on the phone with you and ask those follow-up questions. That's what our eviction prevention program does. We can help you assess your case and see where you have some leverage in that negotiation with your landlord, so that you're able to get an agreement that you can live up to and avoid having an eviction filing. And if it does get to that, we can connect you with legal representation. So please, I urge you to just send us a message using that contact us form, and we'll follow up.
Yes, and the earlier that you contact us and get this whole process going, the more likely that we'll be able to succeed. The worst cases are when people wait till the very last moment, or till after the landlord served you an eviction notice and you have a court date. Then it becomes more and more difficult actually to resolve an issue. Now, at this point, it's possible, and we can help you with that.
Yes,
Another
and again,
thing that oh, sorry.
and just as a reminder, you can get a template letter from us, or by visiting our website on the renters resources page there, you can download a sample letter to start this conversation with your landlord.
Yeah.
Javier?
Yeah, I was going to say, don't wait till the last minute. The courts are closed, but don't wait till June 29th to start agreeing, start negotiating. I would say start the conversation now with the owner. Let's agree to something. Let's get something going. Like I said, you don't want to wait till the last minute, okay, June 29th, and then the courts are going to open soon. I would say start those conversations now. And like I said, follow up with us, send us your contact information so we can get more specific details about your situation.
Yeah, great. And it sounds like they'll do that. It was a written notice. Thanks. Malone's very on top of this conversation. It was a written notice, and they're thanking us. So please do follow up, and we'll talk more about that.
The other thing people should just know, for landlords, just is that if you're covered under the CARES Act, that in fact that mortgage companies have to actually give you some sort of help if you need it, which means that they actually need to put your mortgage payments on the very end of your lease, or your end of your mortgage payments. So, it's, everybody needs to be thinking about this emergency and working together, but certainly landlords should also know if you're covered under the CARES Act that you also have some rights too.
Yes, and with that said, it's important for really anyone just to look up and know if their building's covered, because that's something you can use in a negotiation. If your landlord isn't aware of this or hasn't gotten some relief, and you can offer a possible opportunity for relief, that'll be really great. And on the flip side of that, there are some resources. We have another question. I'm just gonna bounce into this one. Are there any resources currently available? The question was, this person had applied for rental assistance many years ago, and it was very difficult. During coronavirus, are there any current resources or rental assistance available to people in Chicago?
I know the
Javi?
state just passed their new budget, which was passed on the weekend. They are putting like correct, I don't know the specific number, but it's about $500 million in mortgage and rent assistance. So that's going to be with the state. You know, they still haven't specified how they're distributing those funds or what the application is. So, you know, just keep your eye on the news. That's going to be published soon from the state. So, yeah, they approved like about $500 million in rental and mortgage assistance. So just be on the lookout for that.
Thanks, Javier. We're posting in the comments right now the phone number to our tenants' rights hotline. Certainly, I know some people would rather talk on the phone than type out emails. We are very responsive with the emails, so if you can and like doing email, send it to us. We'll respond very quickly. If you want to talk to a live person, our hotline is open from 1 to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, and the hotline number is 773-292-4988, and that was also just posted in the comments on the Facebook link. So please give us a call. The reason we're stressing that is because rental assistance resources fluctuate and they're always changing. So different programs have money that's available at different times. So if you give us a call, we can tell you what we know and that's up to date. Okay, so moving on, we had another question submitted, and this is from a renter who's asking, is my landlord allowed to show my apartment during a stay-at-home order?
No.
Oh,
Yep.
I think that's the best answer. That's what they like, a short and sweet. Do you have a follow-up to that, Javier?
That's basically no. They can't do physical showings. That's basically, you know, what the state said. So, yeah.
Right, and as a reminder, just for folks listening, the governor's latest executive order did clarify that no showings of occupied units are allowed. So if it's an empty apartment, naturally you can show it. Otherwise, they'll need to wait.
I mean, certainly we would encourage people, if you're tech savvy and all that, to try to work with the landlord to maybe do a virtual showing of the unit, you know, depending on what the situation is. So there are other options and other ways to resolve this situation that could be, you know, to everybody's benefit. So that might be one way. So I would, you know, once again, communicate with your landlord and find out, can we do something different? You know, maybe, you know, we could do a little video of our home and just so that people can see it. So that's, you know, something that, you know, I just might suggest, and that may keep your relationship with the landlord on a more friendly notice, or not friendly situate, you know, you'll be friendlier.
Yeah, and I'll often have to tell folks, you know, I understand you kind of got to hold your nose and say certain things in some situations, but the reality really is that the better relationship and the more respect, both ways, of course, that people have and conform with the property manager, the better things will turn out in the end. So again, that really also comes down to a lot of times just communication. if, for instance, you have a repair issue, certainly we'd recommend that you give them a heads up before you send a more formal demand saying that you're going to, reduce rent or something like that. I think we'd all want a chance to fix something at least once before we face bigger consequences. So things like that do matter. Just communicate, and certainly always keep those communications in writing. So we had another question that we kind of glossed over this, but it's a bit different regarding repairs during COVID. This is kind of the reverse of the question. This person's landlord is telling them that they have to come in to make repairs. They didn't specify what kind of repairs. And I think that may make a difference. But the question is, do I have to let my landlord or the maintenance crew come in to make repairs during the stay-at-home order?
I would say that it probably depends on what the repair is or what the situation is. For instance, if you have a leaky pipe and it's leaking down into your neighbor's downstairs, this is something that's going to probably have to get taken care of, and it's an emergency. Certainly, if you ask your downstairs neighbor, they're going to say this is an emergency and we need to be somewhat flexible. I think it's certainly making sure that the landlord follows social distancing, make sure that they have masks and other things when they come in. But, I would say that if it's an emergency situation, to get in to take care of them, something that's impacting others in the building or that, then that the landlord is going to be able, will probably be able to get in, and we should probably, you consider letting them in. If it's something that could deal with in a, it's a little drip here or something like that, I just think that that's something then you could say, well, this doesn't need to get dealt with right now. And that, please, put that off, and we'll deal with it later. So it depends, I would say, on what the size or what the scope of the issue is. And if it's also, once again, if it's just we want to rehab and remodel, to me, that might also be something that could be put off rather than done right at this exact time. So if they're like, oh, well, we want to come in and hang new doors because we want to make the place look nicer so we can raise the rent later on, I would say that you could probably say, well, no, I this is, wait till the stay-at-home order's done. And you should put that in writing, whatever your communication is with the landlord, so that it's all documented.
Absolutely. And just I'd like to add that, Javier and I talked to a lot of people through the eviction prevention program, and one tactic that we find is very helpful is for the tenant to try to control the conversation by being the one to offer the solution. Oftentimes what we do is report it to the landlord and kind of say, what are you going to do about it? But we find it's usually more beneficial to propose the solution to the landlord in as great of detail as you can. So really, for a renter, if you have an issue, think about what would satisfy you, what can they do to truly fix it and have it remedied, and put that in your demand. Offer a solution, whether it's something like coming in and you getting out of the house while they come in to do a repair that's necessary, things like that. And of course, if you don't know how to approach them in that situation, again, hit the link with the contact us form in the comments and send us an email, and we can call you and help prepare you and strategize about how to have that conversation. Okay. So here is a question that a tenant had about evictions. Again, this question is, I had a court date scheduled before the shutdown, and now I don't know what to do. How do I find out when my court date will be? Can I look it up anywhere?
You want to go for that, or I could go?
Yeah, go ahead, Javier.
Yeah, I'm getting the specific website real quick. I don't know it.
So
It's basically the Cook County Clerk website, though.
Okay. Do you want to explain how that works? We will drop a link to that in the comments right now.
Yeah, so if you had a previous court date before the virus, but now you got pushed back, most likely it's going to be in the summertime, probably July, August, sometime around there. We're seeing a lot of people call who had their court case, pushed back months. But if that's the case and you have the case number, put the link on the website, but you could go to the clerk of the county website to look up, when your court date got pushed back.
Correct. And so we did just post a link in the chat to the Cook County Clerk of Courts website. Just as a reminder for folks, when you get to that link, you need to select a division and you need to select the civil division. It does say evictions underneath civil, but make sure you select civil division, and then you can search by your case number, or you can just search by your last name.
And they'll also be sending you out a new court date.
Yes. And Javier, maybe this is a question specifically for you. If a person has a pending court date, what should they do and who should they contact?
They call us, right? Depending on the severity of it, we can connect you with a legal referral. Like I said, we're going to have to assess the specific case, what it is. But yeah, I would say call us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay. We're just going to look through here. We have another question. Or what was the verification for CARES Act? Maybe they're asking who qualifies or falls under the CARES Act. Was that answered directly?
Well, it's any landlord that has received any kind of federal loan guarantee is going to be covered under the CARES Act. So that's going to be, for instance, all HUD subsidized housing, all CHA housing, all Section 8 housing, because they're all part of that, and any owner that has a loan that's guaranteed by a federal agency. So that's about 40% of all rentals is what we're guessing.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's see. We have one more question. So if anyone's out there listening and you have a question, please submit it while we're still here. You've got some great experts here at your disposal. This question from John as well, not John Bartlett. This question is, this tenant signed a lease and now they're not going to be moving in. They cannot move in on August 1st due to the pandemic and their financial situation. What advice can you give to somebody who now, due to the pandemic, can't move in on a lease that they've already signed?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. To me, one is it starts out with right away communicating with the landlord, telling them, I'm not going to be able to move in to the unit. The law says that a landlord has to try to mitigate your damages so that they have to try to re-rent the unit. And that'll give them 2 months if it's not till August 1st. So to re-rent the unit, it should be enough time, I would hope, that they'll be able to find a new renter in that place. So first thing to do is to actually look, or to actually contact the landlord, let them know, tell them that I lost my job, I'm not gonna be able to move, or whatever your situation is. Secondly, I would actually also just look at your lease to make sure that the landlord, on the lease that you signed, that the landlord attached a copy of a summary of the landlord and tenant ordinance. If the summary is not attached, then the law allows tenants to just terminate the lease at any time. So you could actually go and just terminate the lease and say, you didn't provide this, though I would certainly look and make sure that none of the boxes on there are checked that says that you received it, even if you didn't receive it, because you could still run into problems, or it'll be much more difficult to prove that you didn't get it. So that would kind of be two things that I would start out with. Is first is just see if the landlord will let you out. I mean, it's not going to do them any good. And I don't know how much money you've put up, but that may be more difficult getting that back unless the landlord's able to re-rent it.
Well, that's a great answer. And just one more tip on top of that, John mentioned making sure you don't check off acknowledgments that didn't actually occur. And it's very important, believe it or not, and maybe not surprising because I am guilty of doing this same thing, not thoroughly reading through a document. Your lease is very important. And remember, a lease, while most of them are just form leases that everyone copies and pastes and uses again, they're really the agreement that you can come to with your landlord. So if you have something or you're about to move in and they promise that'll be fixed before you come on August 1st, make sure you get that put in writing in the lease, and make sure that if you're signing that they gave you something that they actually did. If they didn't, just make sure you leave that blank.
And I would reiterate too, like, that of anything, the more important thing is like get everything in writing. You know, communication, repair asks, negotiations, everything in writing. You know, like I said, if anything that came out of this live stream, just we're going to reiterate that everything, get everything in writing, basically. Even if the landlord's nice, you still want to get, you know, the paper trail, you know, and everything in writing, you know, going forward, especially during the pandemic.
Yeah, and for the repair stuff that people have been talking about, take photos. Got to have photos so that way, and in fact, I would even attach photos into the letters or whatever that you're sending in, so that way they can, you know, the landlord can't say, oh, I didn't know it was so bad, or I didn't know about this. So it's always put it in writing and attach a photo if you can.
Right. And for all of you tech savvy folks out there, which I'm assuming everyone is since they're watching a Facebook live stream right now, we just popped in the link to our web app, squaredawaychicago.com. Squared Away is a really good tool to document repair problems and issues like this. It takes photos. You can upload all the information and it'll create the notice for you to email, print out, send to your landlord, all of the above. So again, if you have repair problems, we'd urge you to start by documenting those under squaredawaychicago.com. And if you have an issue or the landlord doesn't follow up after you do that, contact us, you know, reach out through the link that we've put up, the contact us form, and we can talk about how to escalate that issue. So that concludes all the questions that have been submitted. Thank you to everybody that submitted a question. These were great. I'd like to give John and Javier both an opportunity just to add anything. Are there any other tips or anything else that you guys would like to say?
Oh, one thing we want to cover real quick, if we could do like a quick 3 minutes, more importantly, lockouts. We've been getting a lot of calls because of that, right? The courts are closed, right? But some, you know, abusive landlords have been, you know, trying to like, you know, intimidate tenants by turning off the gas or just threatening to say that if you don't move by Saturday, we're going to physically kick you out. I would say more important thing right now, you know, now even before the virus happened, is like a landlord cannot interfere with any of your utilities, you know, physically throw you out without the sheriff. And, you know, the sheriffs only come with a court order. So, yeah, that's just another thing we want to reiterate. You know, you can call us to learn more information, but, you know, that's another thing we've been seeing, like an uptick in lockouts going on in the city.
Right. So it sounds, what you're saying, Javier, is that most people's idea of a lockout, while it's true, isn't always just what a lockout is. So it doesn't mean just changing the locks. It could also mean cutting off your electricity right now, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And briefly, for those still here, of course, what you know, in the limited time that we have, what would you suggest the basic steps that a tenant should take if their, you know, electricity is cut off or they come home and the landlord has changed the locks?
Yeah, immediately when that happens, you know, obviously let them know like what he did was unlawful. You know, 2, it is written in the city law, you know, that tenants are supposed to call the police to have them end the lockout. You know, report it, get the, you know, police report and everything. Then after that, if the landlord's still refusing, the police are supposed to arrest them according to the city law. That's just one step to do. Obviously, document and report. Report it to the 311, report it to our hotline, the local alderman's office. I'd say, document, report, follow the city law, which says get the police in to end it. And then most of the times, too, we do get problems with the police not, enforcing the city law. So when that happens, you would have to go up the chain of command, get the commanders involved to report them to the COPA office for police complaints. And even call us, too. But, it's clearly written in the city law that they're not supposed to interfere with your utilities, change the locks on you without court, and all that. Do you guys have any other tips, too?
Yeah, so just as a little bit of a recap, the only person that can remove a tenant or their belongings from their apartment here is the Cook County Sheriff. And to be clear, the Cook County Sheriff is not carrying out any evictions. So nobody should be putting anyone out at this time. And if they do, or they cut off your lights, call the police, call the alderman, call the landlord, and then call us if they're being difficult. We do have experience walking tenants through how to speak with the police who may not be aware of what they're even supposed to do in this situation. So we can help you communicate that need to them if need be. So please, again, not to sound like a broken record, but the contact us link is in the comments. Please use that if you have any issue or there's anything we didn't cover here this evening. Also use that if you have a topic or something that you think is really important for us to cover in the future weeks. We'll be having regular tenant power hours to discuss critical issues that you guys are facing. And we want to make sure we're covering the issues you actually need to talk about. So please send us a message and we'll make sure that whatever critical issue that is, we'll be covering that in our next training. We will be covering in 2 weeks, same time, Wednesday, 6 p.m., domestic violence and tenants' rights, particularly during COVID, but in general. So please share that. Come to our Facebook page and we'll be live 2 weeks from now at 6 p.m. John, Javi, is there anything else?
Well, I would just, like to say is that certainly from MTO's perspective, we know that there's a bit of a power imbalance, that the laws tend to favor the landlords. But what we still want is everyone to know is that you do have rights, and that we want to encourage you to assert those rights, to communicate them to the landlord, because you're never going to get what you want if you don't ask. And secondly, that you should do this sooner than later. That that there's so often the urge or that of just, well, I'll do it later, I'll put it off, and then it's all of a sudden it's on you. When the sooner that you start taking care of a problem, the more likely and easier it'll be to fix the problem, whether it's falling behind on your rent, not being able to pay it, or even repair problems, because repair problems are just going to get worse. So we would just say, communicate with your landlord, do it easy, early, and then also just know you do have rights, and don't just like fold over and say, oh, it's not going to happen. We want to encourage you to stand up and make sure your housing is safe, decent, and affordable.
Thank you, John. And I would just end by saying that MTO is a membership-based organization, and we really rely on our membership to help advocate for change and to help protect the rights that tenants do have, but also advocate for stronger protections like a just cause for eviction ordinance, which we're pushing right now, among other things. So if you do support our work and want to help contribute to the movement for housing justice, please consider donating whatever you can. As we all know, everyone's struggling right now, but we appreciate your support. And thank you for tuning in, and we'll be seeing everyone 2 weeks from now.